Am I audible? Yes, everyone. Is it audible? Is anyone you can reply? Is it audible? Okay, fine. Yeah. Just few more people to join, then we'll start.
என்னதான்
Okay, so shall we start? We should start now. 9:05 already. Are you able to see the screen? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Now here are the questions for your cumulative exam they've given you. Okay, it's PROSPO and DM combined. And the first question here they've asked, which of the following procedure is indicated to produce cross-linking in the polymerization of linear chain? Okay, here read the question carefully. They've asked about linear chain polymer. Okay, not branch chain. This is linear chain. Okay, you have branch chains polymer, you have linear chain acrylics. Okay, so here they've asked about the linear chain. So here the options they've given us: addition of grain refinement agents, addition of difunctional monomers, increasing the amount of heat required for linear polymerization, or incorporating of terminating agents. Now see, grain refining agents are not added into your acrylics. Okay, grain refinement is into your polymers, one, not your acrylics. Okay, in your addition silicone or your other elastomers will have grain refining agents, but not into your acrylics. Now, the second option is difunctional monomers. Now, monomer is the one content, okay, which reacts with your acrylic to form the chain. Okay, basically, your polymerization reaction happens only when you have monomer. That's a simple thing. Okay, and increase the amount of heat required for linear polymerization. See, it here they have asked in general acrylics. They have not focused on asking you about self-cure or heat cure acrylics. Okay, so you have to exclude the option C also. Now, incorporating of terminating agents, all your polymerization reactions do have terminating agents. Okay, they ultimately terminate. The reaction has to end at one point of time. Okay, now here they have asked you cross-linking. Okay, now for cross-linking, you need to have time-functional monomers. Okay, your monomer has to be present for your cross-linking of the polymers. Now, basically, cross-linking is happening between the polymers, which is initiated by the monomer. Now, the activation can be different. Now, for heat cure, the heat is the activation. For cold cure, okay, you have toluidine for activation, or for light cure, you have light for activation. But ultimately, you need to have the monomer, okay, otherwise, you'll not have cross linking. Okay, so that's why the answer for this is addition of bifunctional monomers. Okay, the key has been given to you, I suppose. Yes, because I don't have the key. This is my answer. Okay, the key has been given to you. Okay. Yes. So in the key, the answer is B, I'm hoping. I don't know. Because as per the options, for me, it is B only. Okay. First, we'll finish Prosper. That will be easy. DM. Okay. I'll first finish Prosper. That's quite easy and quick. DM because a lot of definition. Okay. Now the 17th question here. Now advantage of Maryland bridge over cast perforated resin retained FPD. Okay. Now, if you take your resin bonded bridges, you have your cast mesh FPD, you have your Rochette bridge, you have your Maryland bridge, or your Merginia bridge. Now, if you talk about Maryland bridge, it has micromechanical retention. Okay, micromechanical retention because you are etching the metal surface. Now, Virginia bridge has lost salt crystals. Okay, it is a lost salt technique which you're using in your Virginia bridge. Now, if you talk about cast perforated or your Rochelle bridge, the cement can leach out through those perforations. Okay, the cement can leach out through those perforations. Okay, so strength-wise, no, resin bonded bridges do not have strength as your conventional bridges. Strength-wise, both are the same. Now, economical, no, both are not economical as such. Simple in fabrication, yes, probably yes, but the correct option would be more retention because you have micromechanical retention added in your Maryland bridge. Okay, so for the 17th, the answer is A. You have more retention in Maryland bridge as compared to cast perforated resin because in cast perforations, the cement can leach out. Okay, the cement can leach out. So you're not having more retention as compared to your Maryland bridge. Okay. Now, duration of action of propanthyline as anti-Silobog. Now, you use anti-Silobogs sometimes before doing your impression techniques or before your preparations because we don't want, okay, more of a saliva during these procedures. Okay, so considering the procedure time, okay, considering the procedure time, what you're having, okay, now here the options they've given us 5 hours, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, or 2 hours. Okay, now as far as I remember, the answer is 2 hours. Anyone has the key? Can you just see? Propanthyline has 2 hours of action as an anti-Silobog. Okay, it's a direct time question to it. Can you see the key for me once? Anyone? For the 18th question. Scale is 1.5. One second, let me check.
ഇത് 9 രൂപ ஒரு கிழமை 30 ரூபாய்க்கு முருகன் வேண்டியது ஒத்த உருளைக்கிழமை 9 ரூபா இந்த மாதிரி எடுத்து எடுத்துருவாங்க வேண்டாம்
Okay. Here they've given it as 1.5 to 4 hours. So probably we don't know. I'll just find out again. It has given us 1.5 to 4 hours in your reference articles. But I remember it as 2 hours. Okay, I'll just get back to that. Now the 19th question is hemimandibulectomy patient, true is. Now in your hemimandibulectomy, okay, now they are telling hemimandibulectomy, okay, where half of the mandible has been removed. Now the first option is deviation occurs towards A and guide flange process on same side. Deviation occurs towards A and guide flange process on side B. Deviation occurs towards B and guide flange towards A. Deviation occurs towards B and guide flange towards same side. What is A here? Was it a diagrammatic question? 19th question? Anyone can just tell me, because as per the options, deviation occurs towards A and guide flange process on the same side. Deviation occurs towards A. What is A here? Did they mention anything? Is the question half? No, that's the question. Okay. One second, just let me see back. Hemipandibular patient, true is deviation occurs towards A and guide flange process on same side. Deviation occurs towards A and guide flange process on side B. Deviation occurs towards B and guide flange towards A. Deviation occurs towards B and guide flange towards same side. Okay, fine. Leave the question, but I'll explain the concept behind this. Now, hemimandibulectomy patient, when we're talking about hemimandibulectomy, okay, half of the mandible, we are right side or left side mandible has been removed, okay, half of the mandible has been removed. When we're trying to do movement, okay, if you have a prosthesis, okay, if you have a prosthesis and you're trying to do the movement, okay, because in hemimandibulectomy, you don't have one side of mandible, okay, you don't have one side of the mandible, okay, when you're trying to open, or when the patient is trying to open the mouth, okay, there is deviation towards the side which you have the left out mandible. Okay, the deviation is there towards the side, which you have left out mandible, and even the guide flange. Okay, now the guide flange which you're giving, okay, the guide flange which you're giving to the patient in your mandibulectomy patient. See, in mandibulectomy patients, you have to have a guide flange which guides as per your upper teeth, because you don't have one side of the mandible, okay, which has been removed. So this will guide onto this side. Now answer is given as A, I suppose. Okay. Now the guide flange and deviation, okay, they occur on the same side, which is where you have your mandible, okay, left. Okay, deviation occurs to that side only. The mandible, when the patient opens the mandible, it will deviate to that side. 1 second. I'll show you. Yes, this will clear all the doubts. Now here, if you see in mandibulectomy, okay, now when you have mandibulectomy, factors affecting treatment of mandibulectomy patients, okay, one is the location and extent of mandibular defects, okay, and second is your presence of remaining natural teeth or pre-existing implants. Now we are worried about the third, okay, now the degree of post-mandibulectomy rotation and deviation. Now here, as you have loss of mandibular, as if loss of mandibular continuity causes deviation of remaining mandibular segment towards the defect and rotation of mandibular occlusal plane inferiorly. If you can see in the picture here, okay, it is rotating towards the defect, okay, it is rotating towards the defect and occlusal plane is going inferiorly, okay, and rotation is due to pull of the supra. Someone's mic on. Okay, now there is due to pull. Okay. Now here they've asked, I was Rotation is due to the pull of suprahyoid muscles on the residual mandibular fragment. Okay, whatever the left out fragment is there, see you are at least you have half of the mandible left. You have genal tubercles left, you suppose. There is attachment of suprahyoid muscles to them. Okay, even to the hyoid bone, okay, you have your suprahyoid muscles attached. And on the residual fragment, they cause inferior displacement and rotation around the fulcrum of the remaining condyle. Okay. Now the sequel is facial disfigurement, loss of contact. Okay, loss of contact and loss of ability to bring lips together for saliva control to initiate. Okay, swallowing process. Okay, 1 second. No, I'm just confused with the question here. They've mentioned deviation occurs towards A and B. Now, what is A and B here? Okay, the thing is A and B is what actually? Now it has to be on right or left. Whatever A or B it has to be on the right or left. They have to indicate right or left actually. If suppose A is right, considering A as right and B as the left side, okay. Now deviation occurs towards right and guide flange process side B. Okay, the answer is B they have given, but I'll just again see this question. Okay, we'll just go ahead with others. Okay, now the 20th question is concentration of aluminum chloride for gingival retraction. 20%, 25%, 30%, or 35%. Now, as such, both A and B have to be correct answer, let me tell you. But the answer is given as B because the concentration for aluminum chloride for gingival retraction is 5 to 25%. Okay, as per the textbook, it is 5 to 25%. Okay, for a more better choice, it is 25% they've given. It is 5 to 25% of aluminum chloride actually. What's that? Screen is stuck. Okay, 1 second. Okay, now the concentration of aluminum chloride used for gingival retraction is, okay, 20%, 25%, 30%, or 35%. Okay, it is 5 to 25% what aluminum chloride is used. Okay, so but here they have given as 25%, but 5 to 25% is what we use commonly for your gingival retraction. 1 second. We'll see just textbook again for better understanding. Okay. Here in the textbook also they are given as 25%. Okay. Can you see that? Is the slide sharing? Is it getting shared, the screen? Okay, one second, I'll just share again. Now, as per Rosenstiel 5th edition, okay, here they have given aluminum chloride, okay, 25%, okay, 25% aluminum chloride. But as such, 5 to 25% can be used, but here they have given 25% as per the recent edition. 5th edition, it is 25% aluminum chloride, which is used, okay. So you can use 25% aluminum chloride in your gingival retraction, okay. Now here the figure shows. Now the figure shows they've given us the options extracorneal attachment indicated in Kennedy's class 3 situation, extracorneal attachment indicated in Kennedy's class 1 situation, intracorneal attachment indicated in Kennedy's class 3 situation, or intracorneal attachment indicated in any situation. Okay. Pardon me, someone's mic is on. Now this is okay. Now this is all are your intracorneal attachments. Okay, this both intracorneal because it is within the crown. Okay, now extracorneal is your direct retainer. Intracorneal attachments are your precision attachments. Okay, so this is your precision attachment case. Okay, this is your precision attachment case. Okay, it is an intracorneal attachment which can be indicated in any situation. The answer has to be, but here they have given us A, and which is wrong actually. Okay, they've given it as A here, which is wrong. Okay, for the 21st answer, if you have correct, if written option D, it will be correct. Okay, if you've written option D, the figure question. Okay, anyone has a doubt on that, please you can ask me, because here if you're getting confused between extracorneal, it is outside the crown. If you say no, it is attached with the crown. Okay, it is attached with the crown, so it becomes intracorneal attachment. When you talk about extracorneal attachment, your extracorneal attachments are your direct retainers. Okay, your extracorneal attachment are your direct retainers. Okay. Any doubt on that question? No? Okay, fine, then proceed. Okay, fine. I'll show you the diagram. Okay. What I need to take? Let's go. Yes. So the diagram in Google is given on dental website as extra kernel clicks attached. Okay, that's good. Wait a second. I check Google once. Hmm. Yes, it is given as extra kernel clicks attachment, but okay, sorry, pardon me, I've been wrong completely. This is an extra kernel clicks attachment only. But then the answer is given as A, but no, it is can be used in class 1 and class 2 situations also. Okay, pardon me, here in the diagrams, yes, it is an extra kernel attachment. Sorry, absolutely sorry for that. It's an extra kernel attachment, okay, but then it's an extra kernel attachment indicated in Kennedy's class 3 situation, class 1 situation. It can be indicated in class 2 or class 1 and class 3 situation also, or class 4 situation also. Okay, I'll just get back to Ashfaq on this, why they've just given only class 3 situation. 1 second.
Sir, answer is B option.
Answer is B, but in the key is given as A. Answer is B, no?
Yes.
Okay. Then yes, it is in class 1 and class 2 situations, it can be used. Definitely. You see, your attachments basically, we give attachments or your attachment situations mostly in class 1 or class 2 situations, precision attachments. Basically, precision attachments are given in class 1 or class 2 situations. Okay, class 1 or class 2 situations. Now here, if you can see this, here is all your precision attachments. 1 second. This is all precision attachment. These are all intrakernel attachment designs. Okay, where you have intrakernel attachments. Now, not so commonly you see. You have precision attachment designs. Now, if you have this design, okay, this is for class 3. Okay, so the answer is correct only. Class 1 or class 2 situation. If class 2 situation is also there, even that can be okay used. Okay. Now the 22nd question, again it's a diagrammatic question. But 1 second, I guess 21 question is not understood by everyone. Okay, just see the diagram. Okay, even I got confused with the diagram. Now here they are asking about the diagrammatic picture. Okay, what attachment it is. Okay, it is an extra kernel clicks attachment. Okay, it is an extra kernel clicks attachment. Okay. Slide is stuck. 1 second. No, I didn't change the slide yet. Okay, it is. Now is it moving? The slide? Okay. Now in the 21st question, they have asked you which attachment it is. Okay, it is an extra kernel attachment. Okay, it is attached to the crown, but it is an extracorneal attachment, Flex attachment. Okay, and it can be indicated in situations which have class 1 and class 2 both. Okay, it can be indicated in class 1, class 2 situations both. Okay, for your class 3 situations, it will be mostly an intracorneal attachment design. Okay, it is both class 1 and class 2 situations. Now, here it is given the 22nd as the arrows. Okay. Now, the arrow in the situation, the arrows in the picture represent the path of opposing cusps. Okay, path of opposing cusp. Identify the mandibular movement they are asking. Okay. Now, if you see this picture, okay, if you see this picture, it is the cusps or the mandibular anatomy. If you see, that is the left side teeth. Okay, the picture shows left side of the teeth. Now, this movement they are saying it is going. Okay, the movement of the cusp is over to the lateral side. Okay, when you have a right lateral movement. Okay, when you have a right lateral movement. Okay, when you have a right lateral movement. Okay, now remove the left lateral, C and D option. It is on the right lateral movement. You are having this movement. How should I? Mandibular movements last time when we discussed, if you remember, okay, if you remember mandibular movements, we have discussed last time, okay, the lateral movements. When you do the right lateral movement, this arrow mark will go onto the left side. Okay, if you take this is the left side teeth which they have shown. Okay, this is the left side teeth by anatomy. If you see, it is the left side teeth which they have shown to us. Okay, so the movement has to occur on the right side. Okay, right side, right lateral movement. Okay, it is not left lateral means this arrows will be inside. Okay, if it is a left lateral movement and if they're showing the left picture, these arrows would be inside. Okay, so it is a right lateral movement. Okay, right lateral movement, and your working side is the side which you're chewing. Okay, the working side is the side which you're chewing. So is the right lateral movement. Okay, on the non-working side movement, which is the left side. Okay, it's a non-working side. Okay, movement onto the left side. Again, I'll show you TMJ movements. It will help. If you can see in this picture here, okay, if you can see in this picture here, okay, now here is the right lateral movement, okay, right lateral movement. Can you see this picture, the skull? Yes or no? This is very dangerous. Okay. Now here is the right lateral movement. When you're trying to do the right lateral movement, okay. When you do right lateral movement, the left condyle comes out. Okay. The left condyle traverses. Okay, so that becomes the non-working side. Okay, now right side is your working side. And if you see those arrows in the diagrammatic question what they've asked, okay, it was the left picture what they've shown, left mandibular teeth. Okay, the left mandibular teeth was the picture they've shown. Okay, so those are moving towards behind. Those arrows are going behind here, and you have a right lateral movement. Okay, you have a right lateral movement with, okay, left as the non-working side. Now the answer has to be B as per me because it is on the light lateral movement which you have this drift onto the left side. So both C and D are to be excluded, and between A and B it is light lateral and non-working side movement. Okay, the non-working side moves out of the glenoid fossa, the non-working condyle, that is the left side. Okay, the non-working condyle is the left side, not the right side. When you do lateral movements, the condyle which is moving, okay, sorry, the side which is moving laterally will be within the condyle only. The opposing side will come out of the glenoid fossa, okay, against the articular eminence. Have you understood? Pardon me, I'm very slow today. See, always you have in your mandibular movements, you have working side movements and non-working side movements, which is your lateral or left lateral or right lateral. When you're trying to do right lateral movement, the right side of the glenoid condyle stays in the glenoid fossa, okay, and the left side has a translatory movement, okay, it goes against the glenoid fossa towards the articular eminence. Here, as per the picture also, that is what is happening. You have a right lateral movement and the non-working side movement. Non-working side movement means which is the non-working side is the left side here, okay, which is having a translatory motion into the against the articular eminence, that is your left condyle. Okay. Now here they have asked, all are true about linear enamel caries except. Okay, all are true about linear enamel caries. I doubt it is a Rasto question, but still let us read. It is also known as odontoclasia. I've, it is also called as odontoclasia. I don't know, I have to remember. It involves primary dentition. Yes, linear enamel caries. Yes, it involves primary dentition. It predominantly affects mandibular anterior teeth. Probably, I don't know. It results in gross destruction of tooth structure. Yes, B and D are correct. I am doubtful of A and C. What is the answer to this? Is it A or C?
C.
What is the answer to this? C. Okay, probably it is also known as odontoclasia. Okay, it predominantly affects anterior teeth. It doesn't. It affects posterior teeth. Maxillary anterior. It affects. Okay. Okay, hemimandibulectomy. I'll explain again. One second. Now that's what the question here is. Okay, we'll just go through what hemimandibulectomy exactly is, rather than going the question. We'll go through hemimandibulectomy. Now see your mandibular defects. Okay, your mandibular defects have developmental defects or acquired defects. Now developmental defects means you have mandibular prognathism or retrognathism. It has to be corrected by surgical means. Now acquired is because of pathology, maybe tumors, you have OKCs or you have dentigerous cyst or you have any other tumors like your leiomyomatoadenoma or anything. You have tried to remove the mandible. Now, in trauma, fractures cases also sometimes or cancers and all pathological, you have to remove the mandible. Okay. Now, classification of mandibular defects, you have acquired defects, that is marginal, or segmental defects, that is lateral to midline, body only, a ramus or body disarticulation, anterior body. Means you have hemimandibulectomy defects, involving full from body to the ramus, okay, or only body defects or only ramus defects, or you have only anterior region defects, okay. Now you have continuity defects, that is marginal resection, or discontinuity defects, that is your segmental resection. Now, according to Cantor-Curtis, you have 6 classes of mandibular defects. Now, this class 1 is radicular alveolectomy with preservation of mandibular continuity. If you see in the class 1 in the picture here, okay, this is a segmental defect. Okay, this is a segmental, okay, or a continuity. Okay, or you have continuity defect. This is not discontinuity. This is a continuity defect. You have your inferior border continuity. It is joined. Okay. Now, post tissues resected here is portion of alveolar process and body of mandible, lingual and buccal mucosa. Okay, portion of base of tongue and mylohyoid muscle. We will not go in depth for that. We'll just look for. See, this is what is your hemimandibulectomy, lateral resection of the mandible to the midline. This is what happens in hemimandibulectomy. Now, what is happening in hemimandibulectomy is all those described in class 2, in addition to anterior portion of mandible is gone, geniohyoid, genioglossus muscles are gone, remaining portion of mylohyoid muscles with lingual and buccal mucosa. So what all is gone in class 2? You have your condyle, ramus, body of mandible, distal to the cuspid. Okay, you have mylohyoid muscle, hypoglossal nerve, anterior belly of digastric, internal pterygoid, masseter, external pterygoid, pharyngoglossal and palatoglossal muscles. Most of the intrinsic muscles of tongue are gone. Okay, hypoglossal, lingual and inferior nerves are gone that side. Sublingual and submaxillary salivary glands are gone. Mucoperiosteum and adjacent buccal and lingual sulcus mucosa is gone. So what is happening? See, if when we know anatomy for these, now basically we have to have our anatomy strong for this. When you're talking about anatomy to these, okay, here in class 3, okay, that is your hemimandibulectomy cases. Whatever has been removed in class 2, in addition to that, your anterior portion of mandible brushes till the central incisor, okay, till the central incisor has been removed, okay. So what is happening? Your attachments for your genioglossus or geniohyoid muscles, your genial tubercles are gone. Okay, your genial tubercles are gone. So your attachment is gone for your genial tubercles also. So you have loss of geniohyoid or genioglossus muscle attachment. And also the remaining portion of mylohyoid which was left, okay, that is also gone with your buccal and lingual mucosa. Now what is happening here is you have restricted tongue mobility due to loss of tip of tongue and genioglossus muscle. Now, how is the tongue attached here? Because of the genioglossus muscle. Okay. Now that itself is gone. You have resected that. Okay. So you have restricted tongue mobility due to loss of tip of the tongue and genioglossus muscle. Speech, swallowing, saliva control, and manipulation of food severely restricted, because swallowing is restricted because you cannot roll your tongue back. There is restricted mobility of the tongue. Okay. Now, facial disfigurement is worse due to loss of anterior part of mandible, okay, and disarticulation and reduction in amount of basal bone to reduce prosthodontic prognosis, and sometimes scarring of the orbicularis oris muscle. Now, these are the features of your class 3, that is hemimandibulectomy. Now, we'll see in general what is the movements happening, okay. What are the factors which affect, okay, what are the factors which affect your mandibulectomy patients? Okay, now like location and extent of mandibular defects. See, defects of the symphysis region. If you see defects of the symphysis region, okay, they are rotating inwards. Okay, they are rotating inwards. Now, rule of thumb in your discontinuity defects is the farther the anterior the defect, the more disfiguring and functionally debilitating it is likely to be. Okay. See, this is hemimandibulectomy case. Okay, if you see here in these pictures, this is hemimandibulectomy cases, not the second picture. Second picture is class 2 situation. Okay, second picture is a class 2 situation. If you see the first picture, it is a hemimandibulectomy situation. See, here they have given when a guide flange process is planned to correct the mandibular deviation, because the pressure from the guide flange will tend to dislodge the maxillary denture. Now, degree of post-mandibulectomy rotation and deviation is Now, loss of mandibular continuity causes deviation of the remaining mandibular segment towards the defect. Okay, remember this point. Loss of mandibular continuity causes deviation of remaining mandibular segment towards the defect. Okay, and rotation of mandibular occlusal plane inferiorly. If you see this picture, is everyone able to see the slide is getting changed? Yes. Is the slide getting changed? I mean, can you see this picture, this mandibular defect? Okay. Now, if you see this picture clearly, okay, if you see this picture clearly, what is happening here is the deviation is happening towards, okay, remaining segment towards the defect, okay, and rotation of the occlusal plane inferiorly. If you can see the defect side, the plane is going inferiorly, and the rotation of the healthy side. Suppose you have removed left side of the mandible. We have removed left side of the mandible. Okay, we have right side left. So what is happening is this left side, right side will deviate towards or rotate towards your left side. Okay, it is rotating towards the left side. Okay, and the rotation of occlusal plane on the left side will go down. Okay, the rotation of occlusal plane. If you can see here, the plane is occlusal plane on the left side is going down. Now, this is primarily due to the loss of tissue involved in surgical resection. See, we have removed our supra, we have removed genioglossus, we have removed this, we have removed so many things. Now, rotation is happening. Rotation is happening due to pull of the supraoid muscles on the residual mandibular fragment, causing inferior displacement and rotation around the fulcrum of the remaining condyle. Okay. So, what is happening? If you can understand that picture, the first picture, see what is happening. You have attachment of muscles onto the other side, suprahyoid muscles attached. Okay, you have your suprahyoid muscles attached at least. Hyoid bone has at least muscles attached. But your genioglossus, all these muscles are gone. But at least your suprahyoid muscles are attached. So what is happening if the right condyle is functional? It is the only functional condyle. We have removed left side completely. So what is happening? These suprahyoid muscles will try to pull. Okay, they try to pull the right side towards the left side. That is the good side towards the defect side. Okay, it is the pull of the supraoid muscles on the residual mandibular fragment causing inferior displacement and rotation around the fulcrum. So rotation, whatever the fulcrum or condyle has been left, there that is getting rotated. Okay, okay, that is getting rotated. Gravity, that is loss of anchorage of elevator muscles, because you have no anchorage of your. What does your how does your mandible gets elevated? How does your mandible get elevated? Anyone, elevator muscles. You have your temporalis, you have your masseter, okay, and you have your medial pterygoid, which are your elevator muscles. Lateral pterygoid is the only muscle which helps in depressing the mandible, that is opening, with accessory muscles. But when you talk about prime masticatory muscles, temporalis or masseter are the prime to lift back the mandible. But here you have removed mandible itself. Okay, you've removed condyle and mandible. Okay, so you don't have any elevator muscles which try to lift that side, the defective side. Okay, you will not have muscles which will try to lift the defective side. That's why the occlusal plane goes down on that side, and the good side, okay, the healthy side, that is the right side, will try to rotate towards the defect side. Okay, understood. Online class we can't draw diagrams also. Have you understood? See, deviation is due to your pull of the supraoid muscles. Okay, it is because of the pull of the supraoid muscles. The fragment is rotating. Okay, along that remaining condyle, the fragment itself rotates over the defective side. See, on the defective side, you have no muscle pull. You don't have any muscle pull. Okay, you don't have any muscle pull on the defective side because your attachment for masseter, your attachment for temporalis, your attachment for medial pterygoid is gone. You have removed half of the mandible. Half of the mandible removal means with the condyle, everything is gone. Now, this is where all your masticatory muscles attach, and you have removed those only. But on the other side, they are there. So this will try to pull or rotate them around the defect, okay, or deviate them around the defect. Now, in the question, they have asked us about guide plane, okay. Now they've asked A or B, I'm not, this A, B, I didn't understand the question, but see what happens now, guide flange is given. Okay, what is happening here is, if you see in this picture, okay, if you see in this picture here, okay, you can see the picture? Yes, I suppose. Okay, if you see in this picture here, when you give a guide flange, you're trying to guide this mandibular. Okay, the defective side will get the guide flange. You are giving the guide flange onto the defective side. Okay, you're giving the guide flange onto the defective side. Okay, and the guide flange prosthesis will guide the good side. Okay, the healthy side. Okay, the guide flange will guide the healthy side. Now, suppose as per the question, A is the right side and B is the left side. If you take, okay, now A is the unaffected side, B is the affected side. Okay, now when you're having, okay, when you're having a defect onto the left side, okay, the right side will try to rotate or deviate towards the left side because of the pull of your muscles. Okay, and the guide flange is given such that it guides the unaffected side. Okay. One second. See, movement of the guide flange process helps in guiding. Okay, see, by the term guide flange, when you're talking about guide flange, it has to guide the movement of your mandible. Okay, it should not try to deviate the mandible. Okay, it has to guide the mandible such that there is no deviation. Now, the guide flange process will guide the unaffected side. Okay, its movement would be towards the unaffected side. Suppose right side is unaffected, it will guide onto the right side. If left side is unaffected, it will, you're giving the guide flange onto the right side. So it will try to guide your right and left sides. Its movement would be on the unaffected side. Okay, that's how it will balance the deviation. Okay, that's how it will balance the deviation. Now the buccal root of maxillary first, one second, sorry. Now the buccal root of maxillary first premolar is seen distal to ringworld root when cone beam is moved mesial than usual. Cone beam is moved mesial than usual. Cone beam is moved distal than usual. Increased vertical angulation, decreased vertical angulation. See, when you want to see two roots, okay, of maxillary first premolar, you have to move it towards the mesial side, okay. You have to move your cone, okay, your X-ray shooter or your cone towards the mesial side, okay, than usual, such that you get both the roots, okay. Is seen, the buccal root of maxillary first premolar is seen distal to lingual root, okay, when your cone is moved mesial, okay, more mesial when you move, then the buccal root will be seen distal to the lingual root. Now the Rouquet uses an indirect retention in. Are you able to see? The Rouquet uses an indirect retention in complete palatal major connector, horseshoe-shaped major connector, Kennedy's class 4, or do not provide retention. Yes, they've asked about indirect retention. Yes, Rouquet do provide indirect retention. See, in your complete palatal major connector, you are using whole palate. Okay, you don't require any indirect retention. There were very hardly few teeth remaining for any form of indirect retention. Okay, Kennedy's class 4 situation. One second. What's the answer for this? Is it D? Is it D? The answer for 25. Okay, yes. Because horseshoe and Kennedy's class 4 is the same. Kennedy's class 4 and horseshoe is used in Kennedy's class 4 situation only. And in complete pallet measure cutter, you don't use Ruge, you have whole pallet. So as such, Ruge does not provide tension. Okay, they only resist. Among the following, which is an unlikely? See, horseshoe shaped connector is used in class 4 situations only. Now, Ruge, one second here. Textbook, McCracken. Indirect retention. See in the, can you see this slide now? The answer is correct only. As per the textbook, yes, it is correct. Now, some clinicians consider coverage of Ruge area of the maxillary arch as a means of indirect retention because the Ruge is a firm and usually well situated to provide indirect retention for class 1 removal partial denture. Okay. Although it is true that broad coverage over the Ruge area can convincingly provide some support, the fact remains that tissue support is less effective than positive tooth support. The use of Ruge for support of indirect retention is usually part of palatal horseshoe design. Okay, because posterior retention is usually inadequate in this situation, the requirements for indirect retention are probably greater than can be satisfied by this type of tissue support alone. Okay, so here the answer is B only. Okay, this is from McCracken's. The answer is B only to this Ruge support. Okay. Now the next question. Okay, there are conservative questions also, I guess, suppose here. Okay, this was DM, Prostho, and conservative, no? That's why they are mixed questions. Okay. Now, distance of labial surface of incisors from incisor papilla. Distance of labial surface of incisors from incisor papilla is 8 to 10 mm. Does not varies depending on the size of incisor. Does not depend on thickness of alveolar bone. This distance is constant throughout. No, this distance is not constant throughout. It is 8 to 10 mm. Now, incisal edge. Okay, incisal edge is okay 8 to 10 mm. Incisal edge of incisor, maxillary incisor is 8 to 10 mm from the incisor papilla. That's an indicator for your teeth arrangement. Okay, that's an indicator for your teeth arrangement. Okay, you have to see. Okay, 20th question is a direct anatomic question. Okay, now 30th, in which condition reciprocal arm acts as indirect tension, indirect retainer? In which condition a reciprocal arm acts as an indirect retainer when reciprocal arm is placed in the suprabulge area, when reciprocal arm is on cast crown, when reciprocal arm is flexible, when reciprocal arm lies below the height of contour. See, option C and D have to be excluded because reciprocal arm is never flexible. Okay, the only flexible portion is retentive terminal of a clasp. Okay, so the C option is absolutely excluded. Okay, and the reciprocal arm is never below the height of contour. It is obviously above the height of contour. Okay, and when reciprocal arm is on the cast crown, it doesn't provide an indirect retainer. It provides indirect retention only when it's placed in the suprabulge area. Okay, so the answer is A. Answer is A for 30. What is the answer? A only? Anyone? The answer for 30 is okay. Okay, so definitely reciprocal arm is never flexible. See, remember, flexibility is only for the retentive terminal. Okay, and it is never placed below the height of contour, or it is on the cast crown, it cannot provide. Okay, it is not on the cast crown. Now, okay, which of the following 33 question is the slide moving? Is the slide moving? 33rd question. Which of the following is which of is not true of fluid wax technique of recording impression? Okay, correcta number 4 is used in the mouth. Yes, it is an mouth temperature wax. Open mouth technique of impression is recording. Yes, yes. Okay, it records oral tissue in non-functional form. Records the peripheral seal in muscles in their physiologic form. So here he's asking not true. Okay, they record in functional form. Okay, you have to take wax. Okay, fluid wax technique records the tissues in functional form. Okay, so the answer is definitely C. And what's the key? C. Okay. Now, which of the following is untrue of double lingual major connector? Is it audible? I don't know. I'm just reading out. Which of the following is untrue of double lingual major connector? Effectively extends indirect retention. Yes. The two bars have flexible connection by means of minor connectors. Does direct force directly to the single abutment, supported by adequate rest at each end. Okay. Now he's asking about untrue of double lingual major connector. Okay, when you're seeing double lingual major connector, when you're seeing your double lingual major connector. Can you see this slide? Is it audible? Yes. Yes or no? Okay. Fine. I was thinking the net is gone or what. See, in your mandibular major connectors, okay. A mandibular lingual bar with continuous bar, cingulum bar. Okay. Now in this, they have asked us which of the following is untrue of double lingual major connector. Okay. Now it does the double lingual major connector. It takes supports of your cingulums of your incisor teeth, and also there's another bar going lingual bar going down. Okay. And it does not. It does direct force directly to the single abutment, supported by adequate rest at each end. Yes, it is supported by rest on both the premolars. It is used mostly in class 1 and class 2 situations of your Kennedys. Now the two bars which have flexible connection, they see there is no flexible connection between the bars. Okay, there is no flexible connection between the bars by means of major connectors. So as per that, this is untrue. Okay, which of the following is untrue is it option B has to be the answer. The two bars have flexible connection by means of minor connectors. Now here, question number 36, treatment of choice for completely edentulous patient with Parkinson's disorder. See now Parkinson's patient do not have the dexterity. Okay, they are not mentally retarded, but they don't have manual dexterity, or they don't have quick motor responses. Okay, for such patients, what should be the option is conventional CD, implant and tissue supported prosthesis, implant supported CD, or implant supported FPD. See, in such patients, it is always advisable to have FPD, okay, because they don't have the dexterity of to remove or place the CD by themselves. Okay, the answer has to be D. It is always better to go for a fixed prosthesis, because if they get fits, okay, or they Parkinson disorder, they suddenly fall back. If you're giving a conventional CD, they might swallow it. Okay, so conventional CD is not an option. But if in conventional CD only they are giving options as per conventional CD, in conventional CD also you have to give something called as monoplane occlusal scheme, because the patients do not bite. The jaw reflexes are so weak, they do not bite in one side. Okay, they do not bite in single centric. Okay, there are multiple centrics how your Parkinson's patient bite in. So it is always better to have for a monoplane or semi-anatomic teeth of occlusion, not fully anatomic teeth have to be used. Okay, in your Parkinson's disease. But here in the options they've asked implant supported FPD, it is always better to go for implant supported FPD, because these patients do not have the dexterity to place a complete CD and remove it. Now, patient has worn, 38 question, patient has worn an acrylic splint for 6 months for treatment of bruxism. All are true except, okay, all are true except it can cure bruxism. Okay, once bruxism is cured, patient can discontinue wearing it. Yes. Has to be worn for longer periods if bruxism habit returns. Splint therapy should not be indicated for bruxism. Now, all are true except, see, yes, it can cure. See, your bruxism patients, normally for bruxism, you give something called as mouth guard or night guard, which has to be worn in the nights. Okay, for the first week, it has to be worn clinically. How you do is for the first week, you have to wear it continuously. Okay, for the first week, you have to wear it continuously for whole of the time except during eating. Okay, and from the next week you have to continue wearing only during the night times. Okay, and this has to continue for around 4 to 8 weeks minimum. Okay, until the habit is gone. Okay, within 6 months of time, okay, within 6 months of time, okay, it can cure bruxism. Okay, once bruxism is cured, patient can discontinue wearing it. Yes, if it is cured, he has to discontinue it because you don't want to strain your muscles unnecessarily. Okay, and it has to be worn for longer periods if the habit returns. See, that's what it depends on the habit, how it is breaking it, how patient is doing. Maybe he's doing consciously or out of stress. Now that depends on, as per that we have to do it. Now, splint therapy should not be indicated for bruxism. No, it is not like that. It has to be in the question itself is telling acrylic splint has to be worn for 6 months. Now, and he's again twisting the answer by saying splint therapy should not be used. Definitely, splint therapy has to be used. You can use acrylic splint, okay, for your treatment of your bruxism. Now, which of the following cements can ensure durability as well as ease of removal of metal ceramic restoration from titanium implant? Question number 40, they've given us which of the following cements can ensure durability as well as ease of removal of metal ceramic restoration from titanium implant? ZOE, zinc phosphate cement, polycarboxylate cement, or conventional GIC. See, for bonding your implant restorations, okay, cementing your implant restorations to your abutments, okay, metal ceramic crowns to your implant abutments, the commonly used cement is zinc phosphate, okay. Now, in your implant restorations, commonly used cement is zinc phosphate, which we use, not your conventional GIC or polycarboxylate, okay. Now, it is because the phosphate cement has ease of removal, okay, that's why it is used in your implant cementations instead of your ZOE or polycarboxylate or GIC, okay. Now, question number 42, paralleling rod during surveying contacts only cervical one-third of abutment tooth. What should be done? Paralleling rod during surveying contacts only cervical third, one-third of abutment. Okay, what should be done? Tilt the cast so that height of contour shifts to the middle third. Dimpling can be done. Okay. Crown the abutment teeth to alter the height of contour. Place cast circumferential clasp as it is a low survey line. See, cast circumferential clasp is not used in low survey line. Okay, you can use your gingerly approaching class in low survey lines. So remove option D. Now tilt the cast so that height of contour shifts to the middle third. And now if I tell you the height of contour shifting, it is showing surveying paralleling rod is only touching the cervical one third. So the bulge is only present in the cervical one third. Okay. Now what is dimpling? Dimpling is removal of enamel. Okay. It is done in your incisal wrist or something like that. But here not in this situation. You have to give a crown to alter the height of contour. Okay. You have to give a crown to alter the height of contour. Is the answer C? Okay. Okay. Now, difficulty in doing ear implants may be because of inadequate bone thickness, mastoid hair cells can be damaged, compromised bone quality, all of the above. Yes, all of the above. See, the bone thickness is not much there for ear implants, definitely. And behind you have mastoid process with mastoid hair cells. Okay. Okay, that gives balance to us. Okay, that can be damaged. Okay, and even compromised bone quality. It's mostly a porous bone which is present here. Okay, so you can't really do implants. Plus, people have tried. It's not that clinically it is not done. It is tried clinically also. Okay, and there is compromised bone quality. Yes, sometimes it is compromised bone quality which is seen. So all of the above has to be the answer for this. Now, 44th question, warpage of denture during processing results from all except. He's asking warpage of denture during processing results from all except, okay, heat generated during polishing. Now, warpage is means what? You have crack propagations or uh, flakiness of denture. Okay, you have rapid heating and cooling of the flask assembly. Yes, that is grazing can happen. Incomplete flask closure, excess pressure application during packing of the mold. Yes, excess pressure during packing of the mold will also cause cracks in the denture. Incomplete flask closure will not cause warpage. Okay, incomplete flask closure will not cause warpage, but it will cause increased thickness of the acrylic. Okay, you have not compressed completely. It might increase the thickness of your, or it will increase the vertical dimension of the denture. Okay, my adaptation might be not well if you are not closing the flask properly. Okay, so he has asked all except, so the except one is incomplete flask closure only. Now the CPD framework were adjusted independently and seated in oral cavity. Maxillary and mandibular teeth were in hypoocclusion. Premature contact can be due to except. Okay, CPD framework were adjusted independently and seated in oral cavity. Maxillary and mandibular teeth were in hypoocclusion. Premature contact can be due to maxillary mandibular framework contact, maxillary teeth opposing framework, mandibular teeth and opposing framework, none of them. Pardon me 1 second. CPD framework were adjusted independently and seated in the oral cavity. Maxillary and mandibular teeth were in hypoocclusion. Okay, so means they are under occlusion, they are not in occlusion. Premature contact can be due to maxillary and mandibular frame contact, maxillary teeth opposing framework, mandibular teeth and opposing framework, none of the above. See, in CPD, the answer has to be for this none of the above because I'm hoping, what is the answer for this? Is it none of the above? See, why none of the above means, see, if they are asking here, they are saying it as hypoocclusion. Okay, they are saying it as hypoocclusion. Okay, now it is premature contact between teeth can happen. Wait a second. It's a confusing question. Maxillary and mandibular framework contact, maxillary teeth opposing framework, mandibular teeth opposing the framework. Okay, he has asked except. Okay, sorry. Yes, except, yes, you can. The answer is definitely none of them because, see, there can be contact between the maxillary and mandibular framework itself. Suppose there is a rest. Okay, what is happening? Rest are touching because the rests are not adequately trimmed, or your framework contacts at some point of time. Yes, that can happen. The maxillary teeth can hit the lower framework. Okay, maxillary teeth can hit the lower framework at the rest region, or mostly at the rest region only. Okay, or also mandibular teeth can oppose the maxillary framework at the rest region. So answer has to be none of the above. Now the 46th question is, which technique is depicted in the figure? See, by the seeing the figure, the cast, it is definitely altered cast technique, what we can see here. Okay, it is definitely the altered cast technique which is seen in the picture here. Okay. Now, which of the following is not true regarding teeth arrangement using the sound produced? Which of the following is not true? 47 question. Which of the following is not true regarding the teeth arrangement using sound produced? In normal class 1 occlusion, more than 3 mm of tongue is seen. 3 mm of tongue is seen. Okay. In class 2, less than 3 mm of tongue is seen. Okay. Less visibility of tongue in open wide cases when the patient says the. Okay, open wide cases where the patient says that when more than 6 mm of tongue is seen, it means that teeth are lingually placed. Which of the following is not true? Not true regarding the teeth arrangement using sound produced. Nowhere he has mentioned sound only in the third option he has mentioned sound. In normal classroom occlusion, more than 3 mm of tongue is seen. Is the question complete or this much is only the question? But in other options, they have not given only what sound is produced. How can you just 3 mm of tongue is seen? 3 mm of less tongue is seen. What sound actually? But okay. Again, this question is also ambiguous like 19th question. I'll say this question also. Okay, 51st question. The retention of dowel pin retained crown is increased by the retention of a dowel pin. Retention of dowel in a pin retained crown. Sorry, the retention of dowel in a pin retained crown is increased by. Now, dowel is your post. Now, dowel your post, it is increased length, smooth surface, and increased taper. Increased length, serrated surface, and increased taper. Increased length, smooth surface, and parallel sides. Okay, increased length, serrated surface, and parallel sides. Now they are asking about pin retained restoration. Okay, pin retained crown, your towel. Okay, definitely more the length, more the retention. Okay, definitely more the length, more the retention for sure. Okay, and increased taper. It has to be more parallel the sides, more the retention. So it has to be answer is T, increased length, serrated surface, and parallel sides. Okay, increased length, serrated surface, and parallel side. What is the answer? See, parallel surfaces are more better for retention than taper. If you have more taper, you are decreasing the retention because your surface area is also reducing. Okay, so increased length, serrated surface, and parallel side has to be the answer. What is the answer given? Okay, it's T only. Okay, that's what parallel surfaces are more better than obviously tapered surfaces, and serrated surface is more better than smooth surface. Doors. Surface missing. Okay, 54th question. Surface missing in an open face stainless steel crown. Open face stainless steel crown. Occlusal, lingual, mesial, labial. Occlusal, labial, lingual, mesial. Open face stainless steel crown. Surface missing in open face. Okay. Okay, it has to be labial only as per this. 1 second. Can you see this picture? Can you see this picture here? This is what is open surface. Okay, the labial surface. Okay, this is what is the labial surface open. Now, next question is, okay, question number 70. True statement about RPD except distal extension basis rotation occurs creating predominantly non-vertical forces. Clasp placed closer to incisal or occlusal aspect have clasp placed closer to incisal or occlusal aspect have greater likelihood of imparting tipping forces to abutment. Minor connector for maxillary distal extension case should extend till entire ridge and should be ladder or loop design. Finish line junction with major connector should take form of angle greater than 90 degree. Okay. Distal extension basis rotation occurs creating predominantly non-vertical forces. See, yes, there's always a distal extension base rotation happening. Okay, when you have chewing food or sticky foods, okay, there's rotation happening in horizontal, vertical, or sagittal plane of the distal extension bases. Now, these movements are counteracted by your indirect retainers. Okay, so the first option is correct. Now, clasp placed closer to the incisor or occlusal aspect have greater likelihood of imparting tipping forces. Yes, this is also true. Okay, when the clasps are placed more on the incisor or the occlusal aspect, they can tip the tooth. Okay, more the cervical engagement, they'll not try to tip the tooth, but incisor or occlusal engagement will definitely try to tip the tooth. Minor connector for maxillary distal extension case should extend till entire ridge, yes, and should be of ladder and loop design. It can be ladder or it can also be mesh. It can be both, but okay, ladder and loop design is also fine. Finish line junction with major connector should take form of angle greater than 90. No, no. It should not be greater than 90. It should be 90 degrees. Okay. It should be 90 degrees. Okay. Which of the following is true about guide planes? Okay. Guide planes are always developed perpendicular to the path of insertion. Yes, guide planes are the guide planes which guide the path of insertion of the tooth. So guide planes are perpendicular to the path of insertion. Now guide planes guide the process in and out of the mouth, causing undesirable forces against the teeth. Yes, this is also true. When process is completely seated, guide plane should be intimate with minor connectors. Guide planes need to be more than 5 mm in occlusal cervical height. Now guide planes. Now guide planes that determine the relative parallelism of proximal surface of all the potential abutment teeth by contacting the proximal surface of teeth with the surveyor blade or diagnostic stylus. Okay. Dimensions are not given. Guide planes, first option, definitely they are perpendicular. No, they're not perpendicular to the path of insertion. They are parallel. They're parallel to the path of insertion. Guide planes, okay. What is the answer? Is it A or D? What's the answer given? C. But the textbook says you're checking the parallelism. No, the answer has to be parallelism, not. I doubt on the answer. See, the guide planes, okay, that's why they should be parallel to each other and parallel to the selected path of placement and displacement, okay, which is usually almost at right angle to the occlusion plane. Now, have they mentioned occlusion plane? No. It has to be parallel to the path of insertion, but yes, obviously perpendicular to the occlusion plane. Now, the answer has to be A. Answer has to be A. Okay, the answer has to be A for that. Oh, sorry. The question is asking what is true about it. Definitely, it has to be 2 to 4 mm. Guide planes also not 5 mm. Guide planes guide the process in and out of mouth against undesirable forces. No, they are just for path of placement. Okay. Yes, the answer is C. So this is what happens. That I am telling, read the question carefully. Okay, I have to read the question. They are asking true about guide planes. Yes, when the process is completely seated, the guide plane should be intimate with the minor connectors. For sure. That is what it is true. Okay. Yes, we'll continue the other half. Okay. I'll send across the link again today evening. We'll continue then. Okay, we have less participants now. Even I've got some urgent work. Okay, we'll continue the session again. Okay, we'll get back to dental material questions and the remaining prosto questions, whatever there. We'll have a better answers to this. Even I'll get time. Okay, so in the evening we'll have one more session by around like 6 after 6 o'clock. Okay, post 6 o'clock we'll have one more session for this. Okay, then we'll have it all the questions covered completely. Even I'm in a hurry. Okay, we'll try to finish then. At least just go through the questions and we are 19th question for sure. Even I'll ask Ashfaq what 19th question is towards A and B. I have still no clue of that. Okay. And also one more question was I was telling you. Okay, that I'll see. Okay, we'll again meet in the evening around like 6 o'clock. Okay, till then I'll just refer to the questions again. Fine. Okay, thank you.